I'll say over to our next speaker, Brian.
Hi everyone, I'm Brian, I'm an addict. Well done for staying here. Thank you so much for that wonderful share. Does anybody have a problem thinking that this is an illness? Does anybody have a problem with that? I used to have a problem with that. I said, what illness? You know, what's the cause of it? Show me the pathology, show me the virus, whatever. I'm still pretty sick, and I've got a little thing to share with you. 3 weeks ago, I was in a little theatrical production, which involved baseball bat. And 5 days ago, I was in a situation in the traffic where we were in gridlock, and there were two people behind me, and they kept nudging the back of my car. And what they didn't know was in the boot of my car, I had this. And I found myself getting out of my car and opening the boot and kind of standing there like this and saying, do you guys really want to fuck with me? And they were kind of, oh no. And my heart melted. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean it, but don't fuck with me. And what I realised was I hadn't been to a meeting for a while. And I know when I don't go to meetings, I become crazy. And I get irritable, and I get off beam. And I remember the first time, my first drug was alcohol. I remember it when I was 12. I remember it actually more vividly than I remember what I had for breakfast. I don't think I had breakfast today. I'm trying to just do that. But it was an amazing thing. Other people, Manya has mentioned when she first had cocaine. When I first had alcohol, I remember it, and it was wonderful. Probably alcohol was my drug of choice, but when I got to college, it was very uncool. We were all smoking dope and going to see Andy Warhol films, and I hung out quite a lot with a guy called Nick Drake. There's a new book just out about Nick Drake. He was a singer-songwriter guy. He died in 1974, but we were mates at Cambridge. And the mythology is he was an addict. He wasn't an addict. I was the guy who held on to the joint. I was the guy who was red-eyed. I was the guy who was paranoid, lying on his bed, wishing he was Donovan. And these other people were all kind of getting on with you know, I didn't do any work or anything. In those days, you didn't need to. But I discovered amphetamines. To get through exams, I took amphetamines. That was probably my drug of choice, amphetamines. And then it gradually kind of crept up on me. I was a medical student, and I discovered there were tablets available in the hospital, and I was living with nurses who could get hold of these tablets. So I was taking amphetamines, and I was taking tranquilizers, and I was taking sleeping pills. And most of my drug use, most of my kind of serious drug use, which included opiates, was pharmaceutical, because I could get hold of it. This was way back. And from time to time, I would drink, and when I drank, about once a month, I would get into trouble. And it just kind of went on, and I would go from crisis to crisis, and I seemed to be able to get away with it. And then it reached a point where I was told by a psychiatrist, who I went to see just to get out of the awkward situation I was in. He said, look, you need to go to rehab, and there's a place in Forest Hill called Phoenix House. So I went to Phoenix House in Forest Hill. It wasn't a 12-step place. We had to wear a sign saying, I am a stupid child, I need to grow up. People had their heads shaved. It was a lot of confrontative encounter groups, and actually, I learned how to hot wire a Volkswagen. I learned which shops in Bond Street had the worst security, easy to shop with. And there was it was probably, in terms of understanding how addicts think, probably the best experience I've ever had. I got kicked out because I ran out of tobacco and I couldn't cope with it, so they kicked me out. But I continued to get into difficulties, and what happened, eventually I wound up in a place that's been mentioned called Broadway Lodge. And I stayed there for 12 weeks, and then I got kicked out with one of the young ladies who was a lot more interesting to me at that time than the program, because I didn't think it was an illness. I didn't think it was, just something that needed to be arrested. I really didn't want to go to 12-step meetings. I thought this was an American kind of Bible-thumping bunch of nuts. And And it is, of course. But, I mean, it's what I didn't realise, and I didn't realise it until eventually I worked, and I'm a medic, I was going to be a GP, I was working at the Royal Free Hospital, and I was working in the A&E department, and what would happen is at 6 o'clock the shift would end, I'd go across the road to the pub, it's called the Roebuck, remember it well, and that would happen about 6 o'clock, but I'd start thinking about that around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the person who showed up to replace me, if they showed up late, they got a pretty hostile response, like, can you be on time tomorrow? You know, and I wanted to go to the pub, and the first drink and the second drink went down pretty fast, and then I kind of relaxed and got into playing Space Invaders or shooting pool or whatever. And about once a month, I would get into a fight, I would get into an argument, I would flirt with somebody else's wife, stupid stuff. It was never particularly spectacular, it was all stupid stuff. And I heard an advert on the radio, this was 1978, asking for doctors and nurses to go to Cambodia, which is a bit like the recent Ebola thing, where they asked for doctors and nurses to go to Africa. And I just wanted to have some fun, so I joined the Red Cross and I went to Cambodia. My dad was a military man. This was a bit of a military sort of exercise. It was a bit like MASH. We were all living in a camp in Thailand on the Cambodian border, and we had to be in the camp in the dark because the Thai army wouldn't let us work in the dark because there were landmines and people shooting each other and stuff. So we went to this camp where we kind of chased the Swedish nurses around and drank Thai lager. And it was good fun, but it was also hard work, and it was very emotional. And we get in, and, you know, there would be people who'd stepped on landmines, and my most heroic thing was to do a caesarean section on a refugee who was giving birth, and she'd got a thing called a placenta previa, which meant she was going to bleed like crazy. And so we didn't have time to get her to the hospital. So I rolled her over and gave her a spinal anesthetic and did a Caesar in a hut, and then she went to the hospital. And they both survived, which was sort of pretty amazing. But what happened was I got promoted. I was still drinking. I wasn't taking any drugs in Cambodia. I was drinking. And we got attacked by Vietnamese troops, which is something we'd kind of been expecting the whole 9 months I was there. And I was in Bangkok at the time when this attack came, and these telexes came from Geneva. All camp coordinators report to Geneva at once. Well, there were 4 of us, and somebody had to sort of stay and look after things. So the compromise was I had to go to Geneva. I got on the next Swiss Air flight, and I arrived in Geneva in 1980. June 1980. And I actually had a spiritual experience. I won't go into the whole thing, but I'd had a girlfriend in Cambodia who was Swiss, and she was going to go back. You know, we had a romance amongst the bullets kind of thing, MASH type romance. And she went back to her fiancé. And when I arrived in Geneva, I rang her up, and she said, if I'm not in, ring my mother. So I rang her mother, and she said, Monsieur, it's not possible. She's in the mountains with her fiancé. There's no point in calling this number again. So, okay, thank you very much. And hung up. It was fun. And about a week later, I was wearing a suit that I'd had made up in the hotel in Bangkok, and I was staying outside Geneva in a village, and the railway system was very efficient, and going up to the Red Cross headquarters and then coming back out to the village. And I was starting to get back into European culture. And this particular day was it was like a bank holiday in Switzerland. And finished what I had to do up at the Red Cross, came back, and the station was very busy, and my French is not that great, and I couldn't figure out what time I needed to get on the train. And a woman came up to me, and she touched my elbow and said, Monsieur, can I help you? This sort of in English, but with his French accent. And I said, yeah, I'm trying to get to this village called Kran. I don't know how to do it. I don't understand the language. And she said, oh, it's very easy. If you're here in 50 minutes, 50 minutes, that station, this platform, it will stop at the village. And I said, thank you very much. Turned away. I was about to buy a Diet Coke. The same woman came up to me and touched my elbow again and said, come with me, I'll take you where you'll be more comfortable. And we walked through the length of Geneva Station, which is about like a mini Paddington station. And at the end of the walk, there was a cafe. And she said, go in there, you'll be more comfortable. And they had kind of croque monsieur and beer and sandwiches and stuff. Thank you, goodbye. And as I walked through the door of this cafe, the girl, whose mother had said she was off in the mountains, walked out, and we met plump in the doorway of this cafe. And she just said, what are you doing here? And I said, can you meet me tomorrow at 3 o'clock, this time, here? And she said, okay. And we parted, and I sat in this, it was like a bad French B movie. I sat in this cafe, and I had a beer and a croque monsieur, and I just thought, whoa, that was not a coincidence. This woman came up to me twice, led me through the station, bumped into Elizabeth, who was looking amazing, and she's going to marry her fiancé. And I suddenly started to feel very comfortable with the idea that this wasn't my plan. This was I knew that God, somehow or other, had got me back to here, and I knew I had to stop drinking. I'd been kicked out of rehab. I knew I was supposed to go to 12-step meetings. Didn't bother. But at this point, I said, okay, I've got to do this. And I came back to England, and I went to, actually, AA, and I said, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I still feel like crap, which I did, when I stopped drinking, I just felt awful. I was anxious, I was angry, I was irritable. It was horrible. I said, if it goes on like this, I'm just going to drink. I'll do this for a year. I'm going to go to 5 meetings a week for a year, and if that doesn't work, if I don't feel better, fuck it, I'm just going to drink and do whatever I need to do to feel all right. And it took me about 3 months, and I was actually, the point of telling you this is that I was sitting in Hines Street in an AA meeting, and I wasn't really listening to what was being said, but I found myself rocking, a bit like I've been rocking tonight, just like this, a gentle thing. And I felt that I'd opened up to something that was healing and nourishing and kind of non-judgmental, and I realized I was feeling better than I had when I walked in, and I had tapped into an energy that was in that room. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, because that energy, that is my medicine. And it's been my medicine since July the 11th, 1980. I haven't got quite as much time as this lovely red-headed lady here, but I've got 43 years on July the 11th. But the thing is, it's today that counts. It's only today. And that it's the same as it was. And I can get crazy 43 years later. If I don't get to meetings, this is my medicine. If I've felt it tonight, just listening to people, not even necessarily paying attention to what they're saying, but just kind of opening up to the energy in the room. Now that's been a fantastic, way better than any Valium I ever took. Seriously, better than anything. But on top of that, we've got to get a sponsor. Go to meetings, work the steps, get us, do some duty, what's it called? Do service. There's all this stuff we can do on top of that fabulous energy that's available in these 12-step meetings. And after a year, I went back through a treatment, and it was the best thing I'd ever done. I just went back, did everything they said, came out, and NA was starting, and I met Dudley, and I met Johnny, and I went to America with Johnny, and we wrote quite a lot of the NA literature when we were over there. So it's been a journey, it's been an adventure. I got married, I got divorced, I've got 3 daughters. They sing in Indian languages. They went to school in India because their aunt ran an international school out there. And, it's been a crazy time. I switched from being a general practitioner to being a psychiatrist, so I've been working as an addiction psychiatrist for the last 40 years. And now the journey is still going on. I'm trying to retire. I can't quite retire because I can't really afford to. I've got an NHS pension that's not really great. I got quite, I like Pellegrino. It's fun. When I'm in good shape, it's fun. When I'm not in good shape, don't bump into my car because I've got a baseball bat in the back. But if I can look after myself, which is my job to do, it's been an amazing time. And I've had friends in the rooms who just, people I was in rehab with, people I've been in the rooms with, we kind of loved each other, we've hugged each other, people have died, Dudley died, Johnny died. It's been quite a journey. And today, it's still going on. I don't know where it's going to go tomorrow, but today, whatever happens, you guys, you can all relapse. You can do what you want. I'm not going to take a drug or a drink today. I promise. I promise you, but most of all, I promise me. And that is the fundamental issue. And it's great to be here. It's a real honour and privilege to be here. And thanks a lot for your attention.
Okay, that brings us to the close of the meeting. A big thanks to our speakers, Michael, Mo and Brian.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay, I'm going to try to talk slower since I got an American accent, okay? So you can understand what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm a recovering addict. My name is Hosea. Hey, and I live in Washington, D.C., but NA has given me the world. My clean date is April 17th, 1985. By the grace of God, you people have not had to change that date. I'm extremely grateful for that. I just want to take a minute and thank the committee, thank the Scott Paul, because, you know, he has a way of convincing you to come do stuff. And I just blocked out time on my calendar because my recovery comes first. And oh my God, the gifts that I've been given from this program, it is nothing to repay. So for about 18 minutes, I'm going to try not to depress you or impress you. I'm going to try to express to you some of my experience, strength, and hopes that we may all stay clean for the rest of this day. The program of NA, which I try to follow, is very simple. I don't use, I pray, I go to meetings, I help somebody if I can, and just as important for me, I mind my business. I stay in my lane. I stay out of your stuff. I did a lot of using all in everybody else's stuff. Not today. I got enough of my own to work on. I don't have time to worry about what you're doing, who you're doing, or why you're doing it. Okay? I come from a two-parent family, two hardworking black folk, and nobody else in my family has this disease but me. I started playing, I had a gift of music at 5 years old, and I had music lessons, and I played in bands very early on, going up and down the East Coast in the United States. But at the age of 15, because I've always felt, I mean, everybody was older, I always felt kind of out of place, just different, just not fitting in. Somebody shoved a can of Old English 800, a beer in my hand, I drank it, and then they gave me a bottle of Robitussin cough syrup, right? And I chased that feeling for the next 17 years because I felt like I was able to do stuff better, I felt a part of, all of those anxieties and insecurities left. I'm not going to take you deep into the war story because I don't have a lot of time, but it got progressively worse. I had a lot of good times, but the end of it, I was 32 years old. I had gone to college. I was back on my parents' sofa in Washington, D.C., on unemployment, angry with the world, and just thought I had a bit of bad luck. I had a lot of people praying for me, and the next thing I know, I get busted by DC's finest, and I'm forced to go to meetings. Today, I thank God for that policeman, and I thank God for that judge that mandated that I go to meetings if I didn't want to go to jail. When I got into these rooms, I saw people that I hadn't seen for a while. They were looking good. They were, they had an oil change. They really looked good, and I wanted that. I really did. I just didn't know how to do it, and they said, just stay in here with us. For anybody that's new, so there were the steps up, and we would read the steps and read the traditions. And the first step that stood out to me was step 9, making direct amends. Now, I had this girlfriend, and I was a tornado. I pawned her jewelry, her grandma's jewelry. I ran up her credit cards. I was a hot mess. And so I want to make amends to her. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Not a clue. It did not go well. It left a very sour taste in my mouth. Even when I talk about it, I can feel that taste again. I never want to go through that again. So I was telling somebody in the fellowship about it, and they said, Hosea, you cannot go they say it's a process. You're at step 0. Come back. And that's when I got a sponsor. So if you're sitting in this room without a sponsor, you are missing half the magic of this program. Please do yourself a favor and let somebody in that you can be accountable to that will help you stay focused and in recovery. Because I can tell myself anything in my mind. I can justify a lot of stuff. And I pray that you get a sponsor that will be honest with you and tell you what you need to hear and not just what you want to hear. I believe in the steps and the traditions of this program. I believe that if I don't learn to live the steps and live the traditions, even if I'm not using, I will be in here just as crazy as I was outside those doors. I will be at every meeting raising my hand, talking about that girlfriend that I lost 15 years ago, or that job that fired me 20 years ago, because I will be stuck in the problem. NA is a solution-oriented program. I have no control over the cards that are dealt me in life, but with the steps and the traditions, I have a way to walk through them. The first step is the problem, my using. The second half of the first step is where I get to see my insanity because I'm managing my own life. It is at that point that I got a new manager. My higher power does a much better job. I believe I have found in my life that the second step is the solution to this program. Because I get to see that I can stop running from life, blaming everybody else, that I can take my place in life. But I got to go on with the rest of the program in order to receive those gifts. The third step is about faith. For me, it's like being up on a high wire. And even if I fall off, there's a safety net. I'm going to be okay. I have seen things that happened in this program that I thought were the most devastating, ended up being my biggest blessings. I have to stay the course. Every year, I do a 4th step. I'm not advocating that for anybody else. I'm just telling you what works in my recovery. It's like having a mirror that you clean and it's shiny and it's reflective, but over time, it's going to get dusty. It's going to need to be recleaned. So I just do one yearly in April, my anniversary date. They've gotten smaller and smaller, more concise. But I'm a human being. There are always going to be some fears, some resentments, behavioral things I need to work on. I'm a work in progress. The fifth step is about telling it to God, owning it myself, and telling another human being, not every other human being. But I got to tell somebody so it's no longer a secret. Steps 6 and 7 are about change. Because I don't want to be in here the same dishonest, negative thinking person that I came in here. And cling to, that's misery. So I implore you to try to live the steps. Steps 8 and 9, when I got back to that step, there were family, friends, employers, people that had died, and a whole lot of creditors. I owed everybody and their children. I loved borrowing money and not repaying it. But this program works in all areas of my life when I practice it in all areas of my life. And I remember my sponsor telling me that when the opportunity comes to make a ninth step, he said to explain to the person that you're doing it with why you need to do it for you. And when I'm able to do that, I'm not necessarily, it's not required that they accept it. I've had a lot of people tell me go jump off a bridge, but the other steps gives me the foundation to be able to take those body hits. And also, especially with family, after I have done a ninth step, I no longer allow anybody to beat me up about it. Say, dude, that's it. If you want to carry it around, God bless you. But you will not beat me up or make me feel less than for things that I'm making amends about. Because I'm in recovery, and I'm not here just to feel miserable or for you to take advantage of me. I'm in here to learn how to live my life. Step 10 is where I started going to the doctor, which I do to this day because I wasn't taking care of myself. And it's only by the grace of God I'm in relatively good health. And I go to the doctor and I go to the dentist. I'm eating better, giving up a lot of things in my food so that I feel better, because it's hard to be in recovery if I don't feel good. It's mental, spiritual, and physical. So I must pay attention to all of that. There's a question that I still ask myself with that 10th step every night. And I ask other people as I'm getting to know them. I try to. What did I learn about me today? What did I do good for me today? So I'm talking to you and I say, what did you learn about you today? That's where that comes from. Because it continues to be a journey, me learning about me. Step 11 is if you stay clean and you get a sponsor and you start working and stuff, your life is going to get full. You're going to, all them things you want to do, you're going to have opportunities to do it again. But it's important that I have some balance with that. I mean, even football has a halftime, right? The timeout, right? So I have to do that too. I have to take some time, clean my glasses, reevaluate what I'm doing, if I need to make changes. And then I need to ask for help to be reminded why my higher power got me clean. Real important. I believe step 12 is about sponsorship. And sponsorship is not necessarily telling somebody what to do. I have a thing that if I tell the people I sponsor, don't ask me unless you want the truth. I may not necessarily give you unsolicited advice because I've learned in this program the importance of detaching and realizing that they belong to the higher power. They are not mine. So, they're responsible for their choices and the consequences thereof. My responsibility is to remind them how the program works, what might be appropriate in that situation, and let them make their own choices. And I need to do that in all areas of my life. The spiritual awakening as a result of these steps is a change in my attitude about me, how I see the world, and how I see you. The traditions are just as important. So if you're not working with those with your sponsor, you might want to start because they will help with unity. They will help realizing that God is the one in charge. I don't run nothing, but you don't either. That it makes me pay attention to when I want to be prejudiced or say somebody doesn't belong here because I don't like how they share, they speak too long, they're not on the topic, all of that. That's the third tradition. The fourth tradition is where autonomy. The groups have autonomy, but individuals as well. Everybody has the right to be wrong, including me, or change their mind. I cannot give a message till I get a message. And I get a message by working the steps of this program. And it goes into being able to be self-supporting. That's where I learned to tell family members no. And mean it. Because every boat has to float on its own bottom. I cannot buy love. I cannot purchase away my guilt for my past. That's why I have to learn to live the steps so that I'm able to do self-forgiveness. The traditions keep me out of controversy. When 9/11 happened and everybody was crazy and all of this wise long-timer called the Group Conscious and read the 10th tradition, which talks about outside issues. Because we could kill each other in here talking about outside issues and politics and religion and all of that. Real important that I keep this thing crystal clear. I'm here not to use. Anonymity is about what I do outside of these rooms may not be appropriate in here. All I have is one seat, one vote. And so, if I want help, and I got 5 minutes, okay, thanks. I need to pay attention to that. Because we're all at different walks in life, different things going on. But I'm in here not to use. And that's very important for me to remember that. I don't have the right to say that you were here. I need to be very careful when I say that I'm a member of this fellowship. I had to take a pause when I was asked, did I want to be recorded? And I prayed on it, because generally I don't allow recording. But to be able to come to London to share with you all, that's my gift. Oh my God. So just a few things that have happened to me in these 38 years, and I'm going to shut it down. When I came into this program, My world was a 4-block radius. I didn't go anywhere. I was using somebody else's bus pass to get to go and cop drugs. I had burnt out the veins in my arms, and recently I had to do blood work. Monday. And 38 years later, I still have trouble getting ahead. That is always a reminder for me. God seems to give me just what I need to keep me sitting right here in my seat. But my world was a 4-block radius, and since I've been in this program, I've seen much of the world. I got a home group in Paris, France. I'm there all the time. I'm going to be coming to London a little more, too. I really am. I like it. But this is a gift, so I'm going to share about it. I had 4 years clean. So my sponsor, he was all in education. He was working on his PhD at Howard. So he said, you need to go back to school, get some more education. And so to get this guy off my back, because I am a drug addict, okay? I applied to the #1 school in the country, Harvard's Grad School of Design, and I was accepted. I was scared to death. And somebody in my home group that had went there said, you're as smart as they are. And she said something that I use to this day. She said, give yourself permission to fail. Did that take all of the pressure off of me? I could go up there and fail and come back and tell you, well, didn't work out. But I could not go up there and come back and say I didn't try. Y'all beat me up. Y'all really make me feel that. So all I have to do is show up and trust. And I mentioned that about Harvard in case somebody's thinking about they want to go back and get more education. But that's not who I am. That is an opportunity I had. Who I am, I find out by working the steps and the traditions of this program. I'm clear about that. I'm not the car I drive. I'm not the lady that's on my arm or not. What's in my bank account or not, because all those things defined me prior to this program. And I used to that. I am on a spiritual journey that is always moving forward. Last thing, and I'm going to shut it down because I think I've shared everything I'm supposed to. I found this at 30 days, and I'm going to close with it. Again, I want to thank Paul and you people for tolerating me for 18 minutes, But it goes, our mistakes won't irreparably damage our lives unless we let them. It is said that in the art of Persian rug making, all mistakes are adjusted into the pattern so that when the rug is finished, no one could tell where the mistake was made. The same kind of adjustment will take place in our lives if we will but let go of the mental thread of each mistake and let God weave it into a successful and orderly pattern. Thanks for letting me share. I'm going to keep coming back.
Much this is an equal opportunities illness, but also an equal opportunities recovery. But it doesn't really matter where you start from or where you come from, but you end up here and there is the possibility of engaging with something that's so incredible that it's very hard to even explain in 20 minutes or so what this is like for me anyway. I was thinking about my early years in recovery, and there's a few people here, Layla, James, that have been so special because we all started out in the same places at the same time, in our using and in recovery as well. And it's really great to see people that I've travelled with for so many years. This year's been really important to me. I turned 68 and I'm 34 years clean. And I've been doing a sort of tour of duty recently, doing lots of chairs and sharing about basically being half my life in recovery. I mean, for me, it's an incredible feat, turning up and engaging as much as I possibly can every day. Like other people, I guess I didn't come here full of the joys of spring, sort of brimming with sort of happiness and gratitude. I came here very badly beaten and broken, and I'd lost all sorts of faith in life, trust in life, and this was the last place I imagined I would end up, to be honest with you. I suppose we talk a lot in recovery about the gift of desperation. I was certainly desperate, but didn't actually know. I wasn't really in touch with how desperate I was. I've been using since I was 12, 13. And my using started off in the West End of London. I'm from Peckham in South East London. And I used to run away a lot from home because of the violence. Everyone in my family was an addict. And I was an only child in a very, very violent home. And so my only way of getting away and feeling safe was to run away. And of course I ran to the West End where all these bright lights were there, and funny enough I loved the shadows, not the bright lights, the things that lived in the darkness. That's what I found attracted to. And I think that's what I continued doing for the rest of my using, going towards what I thought were the bright lights, but it was always the darker places that I ended up in. Those early years were very much around social services, people trying to look out for me, police picking me up, taking me back home. And when I could sort of escape and get back to the West End, that's what I always did. I was a very bright child. I wasn't stupid by any means, but there wasn't really anyone to guide me or give me structure in life. So I was running my own show from very early on. The way that we sort of lived around the streets in those days, I mean, this is the late 60s, early 70s, and basically we were on the game, to put it in the best way. We were street workers, sex workers as kids. And so, and I've shared this before, that most of my kids, it was the sort of Jimmy Savile days. So most of my friends and I would be seeing police and people that worked in the Houses of Parliament. They were the people, they had flats around Westminster and Victoria, and that's the places we used to find ourselves going to. And I suppose as a kid, you try and learn to use what you've got. And if it's your body, that's all you can use, really. And that's what I did. And so for me, that went hand in hand with using drugs, because I needed something to sort of make it feel okay and to make it feel exciting, like this was all a big party. And I think for lots of the friends that we hang out with, we were all looking for this sort of fantasy mummy or daddy, someone who was going to come along and take care of us. You know, we have that term, sugar daddy, sugar mummy. And that's what we were looking for. And, you know, whenever I've heard news reports about they found bodies in Epping Forest and things like that, I think it's that one of my friends from the Dilly, someone that just went off with someone and never came back. Because that was the life, that's the way it was. And this is before social media, before mobile phones, before the internet. So it was very much about who you knew, where you were, where you went. I used to take this drug called, it was a speed drug called Black Bombers. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them, but I loved them. And I was in this club in Greek Street, it's called the Subway Club, and I was doing the cloakroom. I was only about 14 or 15 at the time. I was doing the cloakroom. I was trying to play the music, and I was running the bar. And I was supposed to be still at school. right? And I met these two people that sort of were slumming it, and they sort of come in after being in one of the pubs in the area, and they ran a fashion business in the West End and in Chelsea in the King's Road. And within the matter of a couple of hours, I'd convinced them to give me a job. And within a few days, I was running a business in Chelsea in the King's Road, where I ran that business for 13 years, very successfully, because I needed the money that I was making for them. It was really my money in my mind. So it was like, one for them, two for me, one for them, two for me, and then it got to the point, all for me. Those years were the sort of the champagne, sort of coke was just coming in, as somebody mentioned earlier in a chair. But the drug that I really found myself getting involved with was freebase. That was very big at that time, and also smack, heroin. And basically I just dined out on that for the whole of that working career, that bit that I went through. And I must say, it was a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like a series of one-night stands. You just wake up and you just don't know where you've been, who you've been with, what you've done with those people, and you just wake up with sort of memories, sort of foggy things. And yet at the same time I used to take some speed or take some bombers or whatever, and then have to go to run a business. So it was this strange Jekyll and Hyde life, because every night I'd finish work and then I'd go home, get changed and go down the West End. I used to go to this club called Candy Box around the West End and places like that, which I loved because it was the club for the people that worked in clubs. It was the after-hours club. And there was a lot of shebeens around my area that I used to go to, and I loved all that. So that's basically what I did for a long time. But the heroin was the one that crept up on me, really. You know, anyone that's got into heroin will know that, you know, it's very hard to keep things afloat when you're trying to track down a dealer or trying to get enough or trying to get the money or meet the dealer at a certain time. And it was like my whole life was in the hands of that drug and the people that held those drugs. I had no power, but in my mind I thought I was really powerful. I had this thing that I was really totally in control, that, you know, I was, what's the word, impervious. Nothing could really hurt me. Needless to say, the champagne years sort of disappeared when it all came on top, and I found myself back out on the streets. You know, I had some money, but the money went very quickly with the freebase and the smack. And then I found myself going back to the very same places that I started from in the West End, hustling around Tottenham Court Road. Really, you know, it got worse. It hadn't got better. I was older, and people were more desperate. And it was just a really sordid time. And I remember coming to my first meeting in 1983. Somebody I knew, I was around with dealers getting some gear, and this person turned up who was trying to convince the dealer to go to this meeting, and the dealer wouldn't go. And so I said, I'll go. I had some gear, I just had a hit. So I was really startled, and I said, yeah, I'll come. Where is it? And I went to this meeting, and I just didn't have a clue about what was going on. I stood at the back of the room and I just listened to all these people, and I just thought, you lot are mad. What it reminded me of, I was a sort of Catholic as a kid, and I call myself a recovering Catholic now. Because there was a lot of stuff that went with that I actually don't agree with, but I'm a big fan of spirituality. But that was my first taste of NA. And then from 83 to 89, I was in and out of meetings, and I want to really make a point here, because for a long time I was in and out of prison, and the people that came and visit me were always people that got clean in NA, because all my friends that were using didn't have any money, or they were doing whatever. But all my friends that got clean always came to see me, especially when I was on remand in the Ville for shoplifting again or whatever. They'd always come up, and do you know what? I hated those people so much. Because all I wanted was drugs. And all they kept bringing was the message. It was horrendous. You know, I was clucking. I was really into like a week's cluck, and I was really still quite ill. and the screw would come and say, "You've got a visitor." I'd go down, it was like an old friend of mine. She said, "Hi, I've got a coffee and a Kit Kat for you." And I'd say, "Where's the gear?" Where's the gear? Anyway, I used to go back to my cell. My cellmate would say to me, "Did you get anything?" I say, "Yeah, the fucking message." But, you know, I laugh about this, I make this into a joke, but it was so important because those people kept coming. And every time I got released from prison, they came and took me to a meeting, even though I slipped and disappeared as quickly as possible. But something was being planted over and over again until the day that I finally decided enough's enough. And this wasn't a conscious thing, this was something beyond my mind. I can't explain these sorts of things. It's very difficult for me to explain spiritual understanding. But something happened that guided me, and I found myself going to this DDU where I've been going for years to get a methadone script. And the woman said to me, "You know, are you going to go into treatment because you're near to death?" I was on crutches, they used to call me Sparky, because I'd worn the rubber bit off the bottom of one of the crutches, and I used to do these mad speed detoxes, and everyone said there were sparks coming off the bottom of the crutches, so my nickname was Sparky. And she said, "You know, if you don't do something, you wanted me on those crutches, you'll be dead." And something hit home. It was a combination of that and where I was at, and realising that small candle of life in me was about to go out. And I had to do something. It was on me. You know, all my life I've had this death wish. You know, I really wasn't frightened of death. I've been sectioned twice for suicide attempts when I was much younger. There was all these things that happened to me, but something happened at that point where I made a decision. And for me, this was my first spiritual awakening. Something awoke in my spirit, and there was this burst of something, and it pushed me forward and propelled me to here. And here I am, 34 years later, after that burst of power. And I made that decision. I went to a place, as somebody mentioned earlier, there are only a couple of places in the UK that actually you could go to, and I went to the Clouds. I was there for 6 weeks, and then I came back to London, and London was like coming down off an acid trip for me. Everything was just very glittery. Noises were too loud, smells were too strong, everything was too much, because I'd spent most of my life sedated in one way or another. And but gradually I got used to it, and I was in this place in Clapham for a while, and I've shared this quite a lot. There was an artist who was there, and he used to do pictures, big sheets of paper with little caricatures of all the people in the house. And the one of me was a puff of smoke, and in the middle of it was "gone to a meeting." And I got forced to stay in the house a lot more because I was going to meetings all the time. I got, told off for that. But someone I knew very well that was in the room, she said to me, "That will come to an end, and you need to form some relationship with NA for when you leave." And that's what I did. By the time I left there, I had about 10 commitments. I was like a pinball wizard, whizzing around London. The meeting was growing quite quickly at that time. This was the late 80s, and there was a lot of meetings. It was a bit bigger than the one sheet. It was expanded, I think, with the 3 sheets. And my favourite meeting, and we used to go a lot to the Frith Street meeting in Soho. But before that, the meeting that the Frith Street meeting took over from was the meeting at the probation office in, where was it, Lena? Rathbone Place. I loved that meeting. It was like my using because it was full of frontline addicts. I'll never forget, there was a woman came there, she had a hit in the toilet, she went over and we carried her in and plumped her in front of the speaker, hoping she'd get the message. And she was like this all the way through the meeting. We kept trying to push her up. But I just loved it because that for me made a lot of sense. That was my type of using, and that was my type of recovery. It was like we were desperate kids still trying to get something, and we would do it regardless of what was going on. Very early on, I was told some very simple things, and someone said to me the 4 S's: steps, service, sponsorships, and sharing. And a sponsee of mine, some years later, added a fifth one. He said, sense of humour. Because you need to have a laugh about all this stuff sometimes. And what I found was that, you know, I really needed to find... I mean, I grew up without a father. My mother was an addict, and she was also on the game. And she was around Brixton, Peckham, around there, doing what she did. And she had two kids. One she gave to my gran, which was me. I was given to her mother. And my other sister, who I never knew as my sister, was given to my aunt. I mean, this was quite a common thing in those days in Irish families. If people couldn't have kids, they got them from somewhere else. And so for me, growing up without a dad was really pivotal, you know, where people have the idea of a father in their mind. I had this blank space. And my mother died in the 80s of her addiction, and she never told me, you know, who my dad was. So I've never worked out. There were rumours it might have been a punter, it might be one of my uncles she'd had an affair with, it might be a number of things, but that was it. So for me to get a sponsor and to have a man in my life was really important, and not someone I'm going to do something else with. It had to be a spiritual connection. And so for me, I've really taken that and held that really in a sort of holy place in terms of sponsorship. I sponsor a lot of guys. I really believe in that what we do here is about connection. It's about putting the spark plug in something. Like the engine in my mind wasn't working properly. When I use drugs, it's like something started to spark and work. And what I've had to do clean is find a way to help my mind and my body and my spirit, my feelings all connect again through this program. And that's what I bring to the table in terms of my recovery. I mean, I have a real strong passion for what we do here. And it's really tough sometimes because lots of people come into my life. I form very strong relationships with them, and then they go for different reasons. Sometimes people disappear from NA or they go to another fellowship. But I'm really quite passionate about what we do in NA. I've been very purist in that I don't go to other fellowships. In my early years, I was very involved in fellowships to do with families and codependency. I was very involved with that because I believe that if you don't deal with your family gear, it deals with you. You know, it will come out in your relationships with other people in the rooms, with sponsorship, with sponsees, lovers, all of that sort of stuff. And it's so important for me to get a handle in terms of what I bring to the table. Because I came in as a sort of a book really that had never been read. And I've had to learn to read that book and not be frightened to what I read and what I find. And everyone here, in some way or sense, has always helped me do that. I've never felt that although I have this belief that I'm actually on my own in myself, within myself, I don't believe I'm alone as such, because I always have people to connect with. In the lead up to the pandemic in 2019, my long-term on-off partner died of cancer in the August in 2019, and my goddaughter also died of cancer. So two very sad bereavements in 1 month. And I was able to help out with the funeral of my partner because he didn't have much money. But what I've been able to do for the last 3-4 years is actually become a surrogate parent to my goddaughter's children. And so now I've been given... this always gets me. I've been given this opportunity to be a father without having to get married, which is quite a great thing, actually. I only have them half a week or sometimes a week during the school holidays, but I do my best to try and be that man. They have a dad, he's around, but he's a drinker. He's a roofer and a drinker, and it's not a good look because he's fallen off the roof twice since Christmas. You know, but these are kids that really needed. When the oldest child lost her mum, she was really angry, and she used to do these pictures of a little outline of me, sort of, and she'd pin it to a cupboard, and in the picture she'd do this kid sort of stabbing this thing and all blood coming out of it. And I used to say to her, you know, you're a really good artist. That's all I could say to her, because I knew if I said to her, you're really angry about your mum, aren't you? You want to take it out on someone and I'm the only person around. I knew that would be the wrong thing. So now she's actually going to go to art college. She's of that age, and she's being encouraged by me to actually work on a skill, a talent that she's got. And the other two, I'm helping them. I'm actually not a bad cook, so I'm helping them to learn how to cook, to look after themselves. I keep telling them, this isn't for a man or a woman or any other gender. This is for you, to take care of yourself when you get older. Because I said, no one did it for me, so I'm going to do it for you now. And someone said to me the other day that in looking after these children, I'm making amends to the child that never got it in me. Thanks for listening.
A packet. Well, I was supposed to be there in the afternoon. I got there at 2:00 in the morning. How they let me in, I don't know, because they had such strict boundaries. But my higher power was on my side. I went in and I did use in there, and I got asked to leave. I was absolutely appalled. How dare they? I was so ill. I look back in hindsight and I just think, oh my God, you're talking about the steps, and I really firmly believe that step 2 is such, being restored to sanity. I was completely and utterly insane, but my life and my world was sane to me at that time. It's only when I look back and over the years, and that took quite a while to thaw, because that's what my life had become. That's what my world had become. The blame about this one and that one, if it wasn't for him, if it wasn't for her, if I hadn't lost my business, if I hadn't done all that stuff that we talk about. And then I got asked to leave. My counsellor at the time saw something in me, because in those days as well, you're out for a month at least, and then they assess, and they have a whole number. I went back to London, used immediately, knew I had to do something, took myself back to Western, put myself in a B&B, went to meetings, go back to London on the train, more or less every single day. I had someone that was like an enabler. He was waiting for me. We'd go to a hotel, I'd get back on the train and go back to Western. And that went on for about 10 days. And and there was a convention in Western. And I remember I was on the train coming back. I remember it so well, even what I was wearing a Snoopy outfit thing. And there was a convention, and I walked into this convention, and on the train, I thought, I had my work with me from what I had done in Broadway, and I looked at my work, and I looked at step 1, and the word powerlessness. You could have been in Chinese, it could have been double Dutch, it was another language, another world. And I thought, this is powerlessness. Going back to London, not telling anybody, using and coming back, and then doing the same thing. And I'm trying to get back into treatment. I'm trying. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I walked into that convention, and lots of counsellors were there. They knew me and everything. And I thought, the countdown. What do I do? Do I start to get honest? I stood up to get a white key ring. And from that time, actually I didn't, I used the next day. My counsellor said to me, I will get you back in if you could do it. Anyway, I got back into treatment, and May the 19th, 1985, I have never, ever looked back. It had been the best thing I have ever done for myself, for my children, for my family. And as I say, I've never looked back. I really engaged. I really, really got into the fellowship, into the steps, into trying to... It took me... It takes time, doesn't it, at the beginning? It takes time to comprehend. It's really, really hard. Even the word higher power, my connection with anything spiritual at the time, my spirit was so dead from years of using, and the loss and the shame and the guilt and especially being a mother of young. I mean, I envy people that have had children in recovery, because my poor children, what they had to, they were so damaged, really. I mean, they're amazing now. They've grown up, they've got their own children, and we've been on a massive journey in recovery. I divorced my husband, their father, while I was in halfway house, actually. And, he was nuts and crazy, and there was loads of drama. But I really, really got the sense of myself and got the strength to finally, I knew that it could not go on. And to save me and my children, I had to be really strong, even with all the threats and stuff like that. So I completed, and I started to do service. I was very, very fortunate, because it was the World Convention. And the most clean person at the time, in NA anyway, was about 4 or 5 years. So we put this convention on, World Convention, and I was part of the committee. And it was just amazing. And how it was at Wembley, the whole arena, and it was just fantastic. And I got involved in... Well, I got myself a sponsor, I worked the steps, I went to 2 meetings a day. I loved meetings. And in those days, you had an A4 sheet of meetings. That was it, in London. That was it. And there was a couple in Bristol, there was a couple in Weston, maybe on a Monday and a Saturday or whatever, and the odd one. But in London, where I came back to, where my children, it was an A4 sheet. And I went to all those meetings. I was really lucky. It was like the beginning of something. It was the camaraderie. So we all knew each other. We were such a community, and small, and really supported each other so strongly. And I just worked the steps. I really tried and did everything. I got the sponsors. I said I did so much service. I loved it. I really loved it. And slowly but surely, I started to turn my life and my children's life around. I made a commitment that, they would, I was on a quest to get their life back, really, as well. And obviously, to get their life back was to get my life back, too. I urge, people sitting here, if, debating about using, and you have children, and think about the damage, and that, they have no choice. I would not change anything in my life, even with the worst and the darkest times. But the only thing I really still, to this day, and I've done loads of work, and they're fantastic, it's wonderful. I can never, ever really come to 100% terms with the damage I caused them, or their father too, because they had no choice in it. But as I say, I'm very lucky and very fortunate that they have grown, and they've been through their ups and downs, and we have a fantastic relationship, and they have children of their own. So I'm a grandmother. I can be a really good grandmother. I'm a better grandmother than I loved my children, and I did the best I could. But obviously, when you're using, it's impossible. It's impossible. I divorced my husband while I was in halfway house. That was a really difficult thing to do. And then I went into a relationship with someone that was in the fellowship for 12 years, and really was in love with him, and we had a fantastic time together. And that ended, and I was devastated. But in between that, because I'd built such an amazing network of friends and support and community, when that happened, I really felt suicidal, actually, because I was clean, and so there was no way that I would use or think about using or drinking. But I felt suicidal. But I came to more meetings. I got the support. I I'm really good at letting people share. I'll come to that in a sec, but I find it really hard to ask for help. Even to this day, it's not the easiest for me. Obviously, I've learned over the years, but it's never been that easy. But I got so supported, and I got through that. Then I met my husband, actually, months after that, and we had 25 years together. And the sadness is that he died at the end of August, just gone. And it's been really, really, really devastating. I had lost him. I lost my parents in recovery, and that was really difficult because I was very, very close, particularly to my father. And of course, but losing a parent is losing a husband that you spent so much time and you do so much together with, and the support. And it's things like you go home, even if you go out together, you're doing and talking to other people, and you go home and say, what do you think about that? Who do you all that sort of, there's nothing like that to process. But again, the fellowship, my children, my family, my sisters, I reached out for help, and they've been the most amazing support. It's been tough. It's been really tough. I never, ever once thought about picking up a drug. I never, ever once thought about picking up a drink. He had a stroke, and he was getting better, then he had a catastrophic, and it was months of real trauma. We talked about trauma, but it was real trauma because he was coming home. And at the end, where he had a catastrophic stroke, and it took 8 days before he passed away. And I nursed him all the way through and was there 24/7, not once. The only thing I did think about was a cigarette, actually, because I gave up smoking about 11 years in. But I was present, and I allowed myself to feel the feelings, and it was so devastating, and it is devastatingly painful. But over the years, I've learned to be able to I want to feel those feelings. It's really, really important. Okay. This is my journey. This is just 9-10 months in, and there's all the other stuff to sort out. I wouldn't be alive, number one. I would never, ever, ever have the life I have had, and I owe it completely to NA, to the fellowship, to the people, to the service, to the steps. I mean, it's like an imprint in my DNA, actually. It really is there. All the slogans, all the sayings, all the steps, when I really, really need it, I take a moment. People just are marveled at the way that I am. I don't see it, but actually it's only because of this. We are gifted with this. It's such a gift to have in our lives. And the only way to maintain it is keep coming back, do service, listen to what people say, have a fantastic life. Whatever it is, it is amazing in recovery. Whether you get money or not, or whatever, it's your soul, it's your spirit. It gets alive again. Joy comes back into one's life. I couldn't feel joy. I had this gaping hole. Obviously, I didn't know I was an addict until I was told I was an addict, because it was just how it went. But when you look in hindsight and understood why I medicated and why, that first line of cocaine, yes, it made me feel I couldn't do it for myself. And the honesty, very quickly, because I'm nearly up. The honesty took time to be able to be completely honest. I lost the art, or maybe I never had it, because it was too painful, too difficult to just always people please or do the right thing, or not actually share how I'm feeling. I'd keep in the background. So the honesty has been such a freedom, and the key to be able to feel just alive and wonderful, and even with all the really sadness and the loss that I have, I still have this amazing life that I have to say as well, I've worked hard for. And beginning to, when it's that cliche, deserve it. It's hard to come to terms. I deserve it. I get told it all the time. It's still a deep-rooted core thing. Do I deserve this? And it's I work on it all the time. Anyway, thanks for listening to me. And see you.
My name's Mo. I'm an alcoholic, an addict, and many, many other things. I don't know you, but I think I know you. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because you mentioned a lot of places I go to, and I was on the gay scene, very young as well, selling to the rent boys. But I was my own best customer. That was a very young age of 14. I'm now 67. I've got to be honest, completely honest, I'm a bit confused. I was here 5 years ago, sitting up here, and it was the history of NA. And I was engaged to the co-founder. And he died. And I got tracked down. I don't go to NA, I go to AA. That's why I said I'm an alcoholic first before an addict, see, because I was an addict first, like, very young, but then I thought I'd become normal. And when I was 18, I started going into pubs. And I always say, put an addict in a pub and see what happens. And I got the flavour. And it got bad, really bad. But I don't want to talk about me. I'm not supposed to talk about me, but I want to talk about Johnny. I'm sure you want to hear about Johnny. I come into AA in 1983, but I weren't ready in AA. And then I went back in 85, and I was told, this is a serious illness, you'll die. I thought everybody was neurotic. They're telling me it's a killer illness. I'm 27 years old. I'm fit, I'm skinny, I've got long hair, I've got good legs, I'm wearing high heels, I'm a little dolly bird, and they're telling me I'm going to die. I thought, they're fucking neurotic, that look. But then I started identifying with the feelings. And there was a girl that I used to work with that was in AA when I was on the piss. I worked with her, and I lost sort of contact, and when I started going to AA, we hooked up again. And she says, I'm having a dinner party. I said, oh yeah. She said, yeah, you should come. I went, all right. She said, Johnny's coming. I went, who's he? She went, the co-founder of NA. I went, all right. So I went. And at the time, he lived in, he's always lived there, in Shepherd's Bush. And I was an undertaker at the time. That's another story. I've had some funny jobs. Believe me. Anyway, I only took the job on because you got a free flat. I'd know where to live. They said to me, are you frightened of the dead? I went, nah. I was shitting myself. The fucking body's downstairs in the mortuary. I lived above them. Fucking hell. I did that in my using and in sobriety, like when I was clean. Fucking mad. Anyway, so Johnny had he used to ride a bike. And of course, I've got a car. You know, that's the first thing I've done. Because I heard, you'll get freedom when you come in here. Freedom? I thought, yeah, I learn how to drive and I'll buy a car. So I'd done that. So he asked me for a lift home, so I gave him a lift home. Anyway, he phones me up a couple of days later. He says, do you want to go out for a meal? I went, yeah, all right. So I goes out for a meal with him, and I thought it was just fellowship, you know, like fellowship, no romance or nothing. But I started liking him. And I'm saying to my mate who's invited us to the dinner party, I like him. So she says, well, why don't you have a dinner party and invite him? I said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So I had a dinner party and I invited him. And she says, I'm going to turn round after I've eaten, she says, and I'm going to say, well, I've got to go, I'll rush off somewhere, so I'll leave you two alone. So this was all planned. Anyway, it didn't work. She fucked off. And he turns around and went, I've just got to go and see my mate in the minicab office across the road. And he fucked off. So I'm on the phone to her. I went, it didn't work. Anyway, then he says, do you want to go to cinema? I thought, here we go. Cinema, that's a bit romantic, isn't it, cinema? So I said, yeah, all right. So we go, cinema, still nothing coming across. I'm thinking, fucking hell. Anyway, this is going on for a long time. And one day she phones me up and she goes, he's on his way round here. I went, what for? She says, he's going to tell you something. I said, what's he going to tell me? She went, he's going to tell you that he likes you in that way. And I'm like, fucking hell, I better put my makeup on quick. So anyway, I got ready and he come in and I was really nervous. Anyway, we got together and everything was fine. And I had a dog, a little Yorkie, and it was my son, Benson. And he loved the dog like me. It was like our son sort of thing, this little Yorkie. I was sticking him in my bag and go to meetings with the dog. But Johnny went to his meetings and I went to mine, you know, we were separate. We only went to meetings together when we was on holidays. I can tell you one story about Johnny. I might get emotional here. We told each other stories. Like, I'll tell you one that he told me. He was a street drinker as well. He lived on the streets. And he used to lay down on Shepherd's Bush Green and look up at the sky and look at the planes. And he'd never been on a plane. And this is when he was using, and he used to think, wouldn't it be nice to go on a plane? Wish I was on that plane. Anyway, of course he went into AA to start, because there was no NA, and then started NA. And he used to go to America a lot, and he met Jimmy Kay and his wife, and a lot of members in America. And he used to spend a lot of time in America before he met me. And he used to bring back stuff. I've got all the history in my flat, which I can't put in the archives yet, but it will go in my will to go in the archives. And what happened was he wanted to go to America, but he couldn't get there because of the visa. He had a criminal record. And there was this judge that he knew, and he phoned up the judge, and he met the judge, and the judge told the waiters, whatever you do, don't bring the wine list to the table. So he met the judge, and he said to the judge said to him, I ain't seen you for ages, where you been? Like, because he was always seeing this judge. So the judge turned around and said, he said to the judge, well, I took a bit of your advice, and I'll go to AA, but I want to start NA and I want to go to America, but I can't get there because I can't get a visa. Could you help me out? And I think within 48 hours, the ball started rolling, and he got to America through the judge. Now that judge spoke at Johnny's funeral. In 1996, Johnny passed away at the age of 47. And I had the privilege to be sitting with him in St Mary's Hospital, holding his hand when he passed away. He was a very good man, Johnny. He told me many stories about NA, And I go to his grave quite regular. Yeah, it was a long time ago, 1996 he passed, but the pain is still there. But I am so grateful that I was part of his life and he was part of my life. And I was with him at the end. Such a good man. I told him a story once about when I was living with my partner for 7 years when I was drinking. I don't know how he put up with me for 7 years when I was at it. Fucking hell, I was spiking his drinks with sulphate and everything. I think he needed a bullet up his arse to get him down the pub. He used to say, should we go for a drink, love? I go, yeah, all right, we'll go down the pub, we'll have one drink. He says, we're going home now. So what's the fucking point of coming down here? Fucking one. So I sort of clicked on, so I started putting sulphate in his drink. I thought that'd get him going. It did as well. Anyway, and there was a programme out in the 70s called Roots, and I used to love this programme, Roots. It was on every week. That's when we had 3 channels. And I'd be sitting there watching Roots, and I'd be getting pissed. And he'd come in from work and he'd say, and I'd pretend I weren't pissed. So I used to say, shh, shh, I'm watching this. Because he knew if I spoke, I sound pissed. I go, shh, I don't talk. But in the end, it'd come out. And I said one night to him, I'm going to do that. I'm going to Ireland and I'm going to find my roots. And he says, you can't even get down a dole office down Camden town. What about fucking Ireland? Which was true. I had to get a cab to the dole office. Fucking couldn't get on a bus. I was getting some terrible states. So anyway, I told Johnny about this. So, for my birthday, I was in my 30s, he organised a trip to Ireland to find my roots. And he knew this couple in Dublin, and we stayed in O'Connell Street, and they picked us up in this Jeep, and they took us out into country land sort of thing, Mullingar. And I said to him, drive to the police station because the family would be well known there, do you know what I mean? So they drove us to the police station. So I jumped out of this Jeep, I said, do you know so-and-so family? Oh yes, we do. I thought, fucking knew they would. We got a police escort to the house. Motorbikes. Now I'm with like 3 NA members and we got this police escort to this house. And I felt like Cilla Black come knocking on the door. Surprise, surprise. I knocked on the door and this old woman answered and I said, my real name is Maura, it's Irish, but everyone calls me Mum. I said, I'm Maura, blah, blah. And she said, I said, is Joe? And she said, Mrs. I'll say the name, fuck it, Willis. She says, I'm Mrs. but I'm not Willis now. Anyway, I'm Maura Willis. So she said, oh. And she took us in, and there was an old coal fire, and it was like going back in time. An old radiogram, and she's in the kitchen making us sandwiches and pots of tea coming. And the four of us sitting there, and there's my uncle and his wife, and they started talking about the family, and she went, oh, you know you were named after your Auntie Maura. I went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, she got married to head of drug squad in Amsterdam. I went, oh right, and we all looked at each other, like, okay. And you know, so, and I got to know all the history of the family, and that was the birthday present that Johnny gave me. Yeah, he was a good man, he was good, very thoughtful. Is my 20 minutes up yet? Fuck me, 6. Right. We're all here because we're not all there. Now, it was easy for me to put down a drink and a drug, I've got to be honest. But the hardest thing was getting honest. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it was getting a fucking TV licence. I stopped robbing. I got a TV licence. I'm paying tax and insurance. What the fuck? I said, get a sponsor. I went, that's for the sick ones. I don't need one of them. Fuck that. I mean, I was mental for the first 2 years. Mental. I was going to meetings crying. It was terrible. Pain is my incentive. And after 38 years, I'm fucking the same. Pain. Give me some fucking pain and I will work on myself. Now in 38 years, of course, I've done a lot of work on myself. Do you know what I mean? I feel confident, I've got dignity, I've got madness, I'm not perfect. I love myself. Now, how'd you get that one? That's hard. That is hard. Really hard. I've got to work on that every day. Because I can call myself some, whoa. Now, when I get shit in my head, I sit in my kitchen and I open the window and I go like that and I throw it out the window. I go, you can fuck off. Because it's all lies, it's all bollocks. I've got a great... My first sponsor, well, she died last year. We got really close in lockdown. It was like the JR days when I got her. She used to wear stilettos, padded shoulders, fucking thick makeup. She was called Dublin Helen. And she was fierce. She was strong. She was a god woman. And I looked at her. Even the blokes used to shit themselves when she walked in the meeting. These fucking eyes, she was like... She's a very spiritual woman. She was effing blind like a trooper. And I didn't know all these words, like humility. What's that mean? What's that mean? I didn't get it. You see, I had no education. Never went to school. And she explained things to me. The sponsor I've got today, I've had for 5 years. She lives in New York. And she's good. She's really good for me. And before this fucking COVID shit, me and her we were going backwards and forwards, jet setters, backwards and forwards. She was coming here, I was going there. She was here a couple of months ago. And I'm going there this year. They told me I'd have a life beyond my wildest dreams. I understand today what that means. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it's all due to the programme and the fellowship. Without this, I would be dead. And that's without a drink or a drug. Because it's in here. I've seen people top themselves after fucking 32 years. No drink, no drugs involved. Just gone and done it. It's the head. So I never want to get complacent. I love the speaker that said he does his full step every year. I'm doing mine every 5 years. Fuck that, every 1 year. I couldn't do that. I'm too busy. But if the pain, if the shit hits the fan, so, do you know what I mean? I'll do it. And I'm doing mine now because the shit's hit the fan this year for me. But I won't go into that. I'll go into that with my sponsor. She knows all about it. This year's been one of the worst years of my life, and I've been through some shit. What's been spoken today about bereavement, loss, and all that. Romance and finance are the two major things that were doing my head in. My first sponsor used to say to me, "You're human first." So I thought I'd have to come in here and do it perfect for a robot. I'm fucking on the ball. I'm on the programme. I mean, it's very easy to fly around the world, have loads of money and sit here and say, "Oh yes, I'm on the programme today. Everything's lovely and wonderful in the garden." But when the shit hits the fan, I ain't going to sit here and say it's lovely and wonderful. I've got to be honest. And the shit has hit the fan for me this year. I'm going through let's say, a change. I'm still healing. And I also get outside help because it was a shock, terrible shock. But I believe the best is yet to come. I try and think positive. My sponsor used positive words. I used to say in chairs, I've had a horrific childhood. Horrific. Now I say unusual. Unusual childhood. Having, can't read or write at the age of 11, of course, being a child, wasn't my fault. I never went to school for some reason. There were a lot of reasons. Both my parents were dead by the time I was 18. My mum was an addict, my dad was an alcoholic and a criminal. I was a very fucked up little girl and institutionalised at the age of 8. But at the age of 67, I started a writing classes and a writing course, so I can say today I'm a writer. And hopefully this time next year I can say I'm an author. And I ain't going to write one of them books that you can buy millions of, the fictive, The Boy Called It and all that. Do you know what I mean? I don't want one of them. But also, I've got to be very careful what I write about, because some people are still alive and I don't want them to get arrested, and I don't want to get arrested either. So they all have to be fiction. But I only write about what I know, and I know quite a lot about crime. I wonder why that is. But I know a lot about other things as well. My CV is very unusual. Being an undertaker at the age of 23, when I was on it, the champagne and cocaine, did I have mad parties? What? Because the neighbours downstairs weren't going to complain. And I was dealing with police, coroners, doctors, the phone went, 24/7. People die in the night. I don't know how I did that job for 2 years. There's some funny stories, but there's also some horrific stories, being kidnapped, being battered, being sexually abused, standing up in the Old Bailey for 5 days, being the victim, in court number 1, being humiliated. Nothing stopped me from taking stuff, because I always wanted to change the way I felt. Always. And I can still do that today. Change the way I feel by going out shopping, watching Netflix 24 hours a day. I'm not perfect, but I like me today. And I want to thank everybody that has done this, that worked here, like all the people that make the tea, the coffee, the pot, and that organised all this. It's so good. It's good to be alive. It's good to be above ground. I'm growing old very disgracefully. I can't believe I'll be 70 in 2.5 years. I'm 70. I put a pair of stilettos to come here tonight, and I thought, nah, I'm wearing something comfortable. I ain't going to wear heels. But I love laughter. I love dancing. I love life. And you know what really cheers me up? When I see the newcomer come in and they're all fucked up. They got no job. They got nowhere to live. They're talking bollocks. They think they know it all. They don't know fuck all. You're talking a different language because they ain't got a fucking clue what you're talking about. And you're trying to help them and they just don't listen. And then you start seeing them come back. And they get a job. And they get their home. And they get a few quid. And they go to work and they're fucked and they go home and they have a shower and put clean clobber on and come to a meeting. And you see the change. I love seeing the new colour changing. And even the Oldtimers, you know, we change. I mean, I'm going blind, my hair's falling out, I'm going grey, I've got COPD, I don't smoke, but I'm addicted to vapes, I'm vaping like a mother. And I'm addicted to Diet Coke, all the stuff that's bad. I love cakes, I love cream, I love eating fucking shit. McDonald's, the lot. I put on 2.5 stone in COVID because I thought I deserved it. Government told me I couldn't go out because I've got COPD. If you get it, you'll die. I was fucking petrified. I was wearing gloves and everything. Fucking people go away. So me and my sponsor, we set up a meeting 5 nights a week. I was hosting this meeting in New York. And then when we opened up, I cut it down to 2, and now I cut it down to 1. Now we've been doing it for over 3 years, and I love this meeting in New York. I'm going to shut up now. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I hope someone got it. Well, got something. Even if you've got to laugh, do you know what I mean? It's good to laugh. Good medicine to laugh. Anyway, I'll shut up and I'll pass it back to you.